Okay, this is the lecture for 70-741, Lesson 4, Installing and Configuring DHCP. So, understand that DHCP covers a lot of different concepts. As far as the key terms that you need to understand for this section is BootP, Bootstrap Protocol. It's one of the earliest network protocols that was used to obtain an IP address from a configuration server. A broadcast is sent from one host to all other hosts. In other words, one point to all. DHCP client reservations allow administrators to reserve an IP address for permanent use by a DHCP client. The DHCP console is our Microsoft MMC that allows you to manage the DHCP server and the scopes. And just for those that are unfamiliar with MMC, that's the Microsoft Management Console. A DHCP database is the database that contains the configuration for the DHCP server, the IP addresses that it has distributed, their current lease time, and the IP addresses that the server still has to distribute. DHCP options are options that are assigned when the addresses are assigned or renewed. This can This can include the default gateway, primary, secondary DNS servers, and many other settings. DHCP policies provide you with the ability to give granular control over scopes to allow you to assign different IP addresses or different options based on the device type or its role. Policies are applicable for a specific scope with a defined processing order. The options can be configured at the scope or inherited from server-wide policies. DHCP Scopes, that is a range of IP addresses that can be allocated to clients. DHCP Server Service, a service that works in the background on a server. It distributes IP addresses and other network configuration information. Lease period is after a client receives an IP address and additional configuration information, it has it for a specific period of time called the lease period. Multicast scopes, commonly known as Multicast Address Dynamic Client Allocation Protocol, that's MADCAP, M-A-D-C-A-P, scopes. They allow applications to reserve a multicast IP address for data and content delivery. RRAS is Routing and Remote Access, an administrative tool we use to create a virtual private network, a VPN, gateway for clients providing routing functionality and provide a DHCP relay agent. DHCP relay agent is the mechanism on a router that allows a remote client to receive an IP address for your specified scope. Superscope, the grouping of multiple scopes into a single administrative entry. By using superscopes, you can support larger subnets. So, understand the Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, DHCP, is a network protocol that automatically configures the IP configuration of a device, including assigning IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, and primary and secondary domain name system servers, DNS servers, as many other options. Most clients and some servers that connect to a network receive their address from a DHCP server, including home routers, modems, and office networks. In addition, with the DHCP technology and protocol has become a necessary component of Windows Deployment Services, WDS, to deploy Windows to a client. DHCP is based heavily on the Bootstrap BootP protocol, which was one of the earliest network protocols used to obtain an IP address from a configuration server. DHCP has been included with Windows for years and is included with Windows Server 2016 as a server role. Starting with Windows Server 2012, DHCP supports failover capability. This helps administrators distribute the appropriate IP addresses and network configuration information automatically to network devices or hosts, which eliminate a lot of time that was wasted by manually configuring each host that connects to the network, and eliminates human error during configuration. The devices or hosts include computers, mobile devices, printers, network appliances, and switches. In Active Directory Domain Service Environments, that's ADDS, or domain, domain-joined Windows DHCP servers must be authorized to service DHCP client requests. By forcing DHCP servers to be authorized, clients are protected from rogue domain-joined Windows DHCP servers that might maliciously affect network clients. This authorization does not prevent rogue access points, non-domain joined devices, or other devices from issuing addresses. Those types of devices must be restricted through the use of port security. Creating a DHCP scope. A DHCP scope is a range of IP addresses on a particular subnet that are selected for allocation by a DHCP server. After you install the DHCP role, you can then create a scope using the DHCP snap-in for MMC. DHCP and DNS options, configuring those. DHCP options are not required for use by DHCP. However, they can be essential to an organization to automatically configure these options so that they do not have to be manually configured. On today's network, some of these options are taken for granted. They are nevertheless essential for a client to operate properly on a network. For example, if a client does not have the address of a DNS server assigned, the client will not be able to perform name resolution, and it will not be able to locate resources on the network or access websites on the internet. How does DHCP communication work? Simply stated, we refer to it as DORA. Discovery. The DHCP-enabled client starts and broadcasts a request for an IP address over the network. Offer. Any DHCP servers that receive the request review their pool of IP addresses, their scope, and select one to offer to the client. Request. The client reviews the offers and broadcasts a message to the servers letting them know which IP address it has accepted. Acknowledge. All DHCP servers see the message. Those whose offers are not accepted place the IP address back into their pool for a future client request. The server the client accepted acknowledges and provides additional information to complete the client configuration in providing the default gateway, DNS information, and so on. Understand that after you receive that lease and its additional information and IP address, it is valid for a specific period of time. This is the lease period. When the lease is 50% expired, the client will attempt to renew it with the DHCP server. If the client cannot renew the lease, it tries again before the lease expires. At this point, if it cannot renew the lease, it tries to contact an alternate DHCP server if one's available. If all attempts fail and the client cannot obtain a new address, it auto-configures with a Microsoft Class B subnet with the 169.254 address. We also know this as a PIPA. Let's speak briefly about DHCP version 6 scopes. So if you remember, with IPv4, we assign a single address. If we're able to get that address, we're able to communicate on our network and through our router and get out to the internet. IPv6 works a little bit differently. Your computer can have 3 different addresses. It could be assigned a global unicast address, which is a public IP address. It can have a link local address, which is a private non-routable address confined to a single subnet. This is like a IPv4 APIPA address. Or you may get assigned a unique local address, which is intended for private addressing, but it allows you to join two subnets together without creating any addressing problems. When you configure IPv6, you define prefix, preference, exclusions, valid and preferred lifetimes, and then just the same as IPv4, any specific DHCP options. Let's take a moment to talk about PXE boot, PXE, pre-boot execution environment. This allows a client to boot from a server over the network. PXE-enabled network cards add the DHCP option number 60 to their DHCP Discover packets. Normally, DHCP clients send a DHCP option 67 packet, and then DHCP servers return a DHCP 68 option offer. The ports that DHCP uses are also used by Windows Deployment Services PXE server function. If you'll remember, we did this. We didn't even realize what was occurring. Therefore, if you deploy DHCP and a PXE server on the same machine, you must set DHCP to make offers that include the number 60 option. When we did our lab in 70-740 for WDS, we had our DHCP on a separate server, so we did not have to do that. If you're going to put them on the same machine, the DHCP server then makes the DHCP 60 offer back to the client. You need to set the DHCP 60 option PXE client, 66 boot server host name, and 67 boot file name. You can also set options 66 and 67 in the scope options window in the DHCP console, but you must do the 60 option via the command line. As we talked about earlier, if we have a remote client, or if we wish to be able to give out IP addresses on a different subnet, we have to install the DHCP relay agent. By default, routers don't allow the DHCP broadcast to pass through their routers. Therefore, if a DHCP server needs to hand out addresses to a subnet, it has to be physically connected to the subnet. Or you can install a DHCP relay agent on the subnet that relays the DHCP request to the DHCP server. The DHCP relay agent could be a Windows server or workstation, or built into the router or switch. To enable this, you would log into your server, that is your router, go to Tools, Routing and Remote Access, expand your configured router server and the IPv4 node. You would right-click on DHCP Relay Agent after you've installed it. Choose Properties, and you would see a box such as this. You would specify the DHCP server that the DHCP relay agent relays to. In the box, type in the name of the IP address of the DHCP server, click Add. Now, there has to be a corresponding scope configured in DHCP for it to be able to give IP addresses to clients on this relayed DHCP subnet. Okay, so in this lesson, we learned that DHCP, Dynamic Host Configuration Protocol, is a network protocol that automatically configures the IP configuration of a device, including an IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, and primary and secondary DNS servers. Scopes or ranges of IP addresses can be allocated to clients. The scope consists of a name, a description, range of address, and subnet mask. Options are options that are assigned when the addresses are assigned or renewed. This can include default gateway, that's your router, primary, secondary DNS servers. Other options might include the DNS domain suffix, WINS, TFTP addresses, and so on. In Active Directory domain service environments, domain-joined Windows DHCP servers must be authorized so that they can service DHCP client requests. Client reservations allow an administrator to reserve an IP address by associating a client's MAC address so that the IP address is assigned for permanent use by that DHCP client. By using a reservation, you can ensure that the host will always have the same IP address. A superscope is the grouping of multiple scopes into a single administrative entry. By using superscopes, you can support much larger subnets. Similar to IPv4, IPv6 addresses are divided into network bits and host addresses. In addition, IPv6 supports automatic configuration. However, with a Windows DHCP server, you can perform stateful address auto configuration. By default, routers do not broadcast to pass-through routers. It just doesn't happen. Therefore, for the DHCP server to hand out addresses to a different subnet or other subnets, it has to be physically connected to the subnet somehow. Or you have to install a DHCP relay agent. So, just to bring that all together, by default, your DHCP server will only give out IP addresses on its own subnet. Through the use of a DHCP relay agent on your router and the configuration of those additional subnets on your DHCP server, you have the ability to assign IP addresses to those other subnets through the use of a DHCP relay agent. That wraps up Lesson 4 in 70-741.